All right, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to another edition of Late Night Change Chat. So, appreciate you all being here with me. Please let me know this is a mic check. Let me know that you can hear me okay. We're trying something new tonight. I'm actually supposed to be live streaming on Facebook as well, trying that out through OBS just to make sure everything is working okay. I'm not sure if I will be able to see both chats that way, but for right now, at least I can see YouTube. And I want to see my overlay for some reason is not working, so I might not be able to pop your chats up on the screen. I apologize for that, but I can see them and should be able to read them okay uh, if I need to. So, EM for me, thank you so much for saying hello. I appreciate you giving me the all okay and thumbs up. So it's going to be a kind of an informal chat. I do have some things that I put in the live stream description that I do want to try to cover tonight, but also want to get your questions. I mean, that's one of the main reasons to do this is so that we can have a good back and forth, have a good discussion, and I can answer any questions that you have. A lot going on right now, everything from news about the A5X2. Some of you may have seen earlier this week that Vlad Kostek posted information on FCC filings, and I do have some of those images that I downloaded from the website, so we can kind of walk through those. Not a lot of really new information, but a lot of confirmation. So, one thing being that you have this concern out there that the A5X2 is not going to launch by the end of the year. You heard us discuss that on the E Team discussion that we had last weekend. Roderick kind of thinks that it's not going to come out till early next year, and he may very well be correct. I'm still hopeful that it will be this year, and I think primarily that's this FCC filing gives you that same, maybe a little bit more confidence. I know an FCC filing can be a year out or a longer, but with them having released the information they did, talked about the kind of on ramping and what they were hoping to have production done by the end of this year. That I think that's going to hopefully get them uh, moving in the right direction. Let's just put it that way. Um, but again, drop some comments into the chat. Very happy to engage with you there. Also, I may try to turn off a dock real quick here, and maybe that is causing our issue with the chat. So let me see if that changes anything, and it's not. So just wanted to double check that and make sure I didn't have an issue going there. I am trying some new things as far as overlays, so you'll see some difference with OBS here as far as styles, some different bordering. Let me know what you think of that as well. As you all know me and you know how I work with this, a lot of this has to do with me learning as I go and trying out new things. But again, I do want to talk a little bit about kind of what we're looking at with the A5X2 and that announcement. And I'll switch over and I want to kind of walk through some of the images. And if you see me looking away, it's because I'm managing multiple screens here. But I do want to jump over really quick and jump into the screen share. And please let me know if you all can see this okay again. And if you have questions as we go, jump them in and we will go from there. So, one thing that's nice and really cool about this FCC filing, which was posted on Reddit and then was deleted. So, I'm not sure if the user deleted that or if Supernote moderated that out. And to be fair, the link that it sent you to initially was very much ad ridden, and I think it was kind of a site that looked for FCC filings, but then you could also dig deeper and find it on the FCC website as well. And I'll try and find that link. I actually got it from the ad ridden site, so But you can see here that there things we knew. You knew you would have a tool. You knew you'd have your charging cable with the up top charging port. This gives you some dimensions, and it shows you for it shows you some different angles. Again, shows you dimensions. Thank you, EM, for me for confirming the image is coming through good. Again, nothing new really here as far as dimensions. We had seen this before, and Vlad's video does a really good job of digging into the specs. I'll link that in the description after we're done streaming. But, it seems to be a pretty good approximation of what's going on here. One thing that I think is kind of nice about this is going to be it shows that side view. Let me see if I can pop to that. In fact, I think I may have jumped past it. Yep, right here at the beginning. Sorry, folks. The joys of live stream. So you can see here that you've got those pogo pins, what it appears to be right here in the middle. You've got the mechanical latches for the half folio, or what some of us believe may end up being a full folio design that's coming soon. So again, a lot of possibilities here. The pogo pins really open up for getting a uh, kind of a lot of attachments that could be added to this device. And as we mentioned, you can come down and look, try and scroll down a little bit quicker here. You can see the pin loop, which is again mechanically attached. You can also see power button here and the on top charging port. And that's where it kind of got that man array design language they talked about. Again, that is not an official name of the device. It's not even an official nickname, I don't think. It's just one that they had kind of adopted for kind of that promotional material a while back. And then here you can see these pin loops. And right here you can make out, I don't know if I can get that in closer, but there was some confusion over whether or not these would be regular screws. And from my understanding, it looks like they are. This to me looks like a Phillips head screwdriver slot would go into that, and you'd be able to remove this and replace it with a different color, a different style, leave it off entirely depending on what you're using it for. If you're in an office environment and don't have uh, anything major going on as far as a need for a folio, you just are going from office to office, meeting to meeting, you may have carpeted flooring, whatever have you, or it just sits on your desk. Since they've added these rubber feet that I know both Rod uh, over the weekend, last weekend, was talking about. And I know Voya is a big fan of these. This allows you to not have to use the folio case to be able to have it stable on your desk. So if that's how you're using it, this works out really well. And really, that's about the extent of the external. And as I mentioned before, it's not stuff we didn't know. We kind of knew this already. Robert asks, why do you think Supernote needed to reinvent the A6X2 for the A5X2 when they could have simply made a larger A6X2? Robert, that's a good question. And we talked a little bit about this last weekend when we had the E-Team stream. And I think part of it was if you look at some other announcements on Reddit that where the chief chat officer talked about the the plans surrounding the A5X2 or the A5 Slim, which was supposed to be a slimmer device and was going to kind of go after that thinnest tablet approach, maybe something in line with what the Go 10.3 or Remarkable are kind of shooting for. Uh, they were kind of looking at that. Also, I think there were just some design challenges that came with the way, and you'll notice that on these internal specs, the way the A6X2 was designed. Uh, the crystal folio being removable all the way around created some design challenges. The other cover I think was better. This new cover, which is different than both of those covers, I think may be better still. And we can kind of talk about that. But according to the chief chat officer, what they had talked about, and one of the biggest issues they had was trying to get slimmer and slimmer and slimmer and still maintain modularity. And I think they've opened up to where they can do a lot of different things with this design. Again, a lot of that's conjecture, but they did talk about possibly having to scrap the A5 Slim, which is why they have made this new device, this A5X2, be both slimmer than the original A5, but also still modular like the A6 X2. So I think again they're trying to do the best of both worlds, stay modular but still be slim. That would be my conjecture. But great question. And again, I apologize for any of you. I'm trying to get these overlays to come up, and for some reason your comments aren't popping up on the screen. But again, work in progress. We'll get there eventually. So anyway, great question. Let's go ahead and go through the internal photos, and this is where you'll see a little bit more detail. Sorry, I was on the wrong screen here. On the way this new case looks. And if you remember right, at least from what I've seen of the A5 or sorry, the A6X2 back cover for the white background. And remember, I have the crystals, so mine is going to look different. This appears to me to be kind of a hybrid in some ways. I mean, it still pops off very similarly to the white back of the A5 or the A6X2. Sorry, I keep fumbling those two, but it's contained. So it doesn't run the length of the device. You'll see here that it's actually kind of an inset. And maybe that's what they mean by bionic back. I'm not really sure. But what it allows is, although it's not completely interchangeable, it solves the button issue they had with the crystal version. It also makes sure that the components are well contained and you get that flush kind of backing, and allows those rubber feet to be there as well so that they're not removed. The A6X2 did not have that component. So you wouldn't have had they could make it basically the full length of the device. But the way they're doing this here, they're making sure that they leave for that half folio, for those mechanical elements, that those aren't all being exposed when you pull off that back cover to access the hardware. Again, some of that's conjecture, but I think it's worth talking about. And so that's what you get with this visual here. And as we move down, you'll see again, you get a closer shot of that, and all of these components become removable. You can see the pin loop a little bit better here. You can see how the battery fits into the channel and connects to the SoC, which is system on chip. And then you can see, and I'm not going to go through all of these images, but they take the whole thing apart. You can see all of the components, everything within the system on chip. I don't really want to go through all of that because I think that doesn't really add much to this conversation. The specs are going to be available. Um, and EM for me says the non-clear back makes sense with having a half folio cover. The clear plastic would scratch after a while of use. I think that is a possible reason. Now, I do wonder, since they have this kind of inset instead of being the full length, if they made a cover, and Vlad Kostek alluded to this when we had our live stream last weekend, that he said, it's kind of like when you see the old cars that had the clear see-through engine covers or hoods that would go over and show you the engine. This kind of reminds me of that. So yes, outer you would still have this outer side here, but then you could have a clear inside to be able to see, if you really wanted to, the kind of that chrome battery pack and that chrome system on chip and your memory card, all of those things for the expandable storage. So it's kind of a neat throwback almost to something like that. But I do wonder how these rubber feet would enter into that equation if you did have a clear back here that was interchangeable or just different colors, however you wanted to do that. It's not going to be quite as slick as the A6X2 is with that, but the idea that you could have it and maybe these feet would protect that from rubbing against a surface and having those scuff marks that they had with the crystal. And I do believe that the crystal was hard to work with. That's why there was a back order of it. That's why there were so many issues with it. And then Jaron, I hope I'm saying that right, or Jerone, Bailey says, I thought the clear plastic was harder to work with. Yeah, absolutely. I think that that may be a reason that they went with this other design. At least that, from my perspective, not being an engineer and not being a design expert, that's what I would think would be the reasoning for that. But you would just have to see whether or not that was the thing. But great questions. Keep firing them in there. Questions, comments. What do you think about all this? I mean, this was not expected. It came out on Monday. It kind of hit Reddit really fast. Again, that post was taken down, and some of us managed to get there and get the photos and get that pulled over just so we could take a look at it. And one last thing you'll notice here is that they have some photographs of it actually set up. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these photos, but you can basically see how the device looks and where it charges. I think it's more of a proof of concept for them to be able to show how this works. And to be fair, this is a lot of detail. It is things that we did not see from their initial promotional materials, but welcome news. And let me know what you think. Do you think this is coming out uh, this month? Do you think it's going to come out later on in the year? Do you think it's going to come out this year, even? There's some debate around that. I put out a poll earlier in the week, and you're split. It was, I believe, last I checked, 55-45. 55% of people thought it was going to be next year, 45% think it's still going to be this year. So there's a real divide on this, and whether or not the company is going to be able to get this released in this current cycle. Yeah, and Jerome mentions that the ladder drop had disappeared from the promo info, and I think primarily, I'm surprised they even left the frisbee throw on there, and we talked about that a little bit last weekend too. But from a business perspective, it's probably not the best way to show that. To be honest, though, I think it was really cool for Rada to take that tact, and it kind of shows that they're a little bit unconventional when it comes to their marketing methods and the way they communicate with their community. I think it's nice to see, but yeah, I can see some liability issues of having that drop test and then somebody gets the device and the first thing they do is take it up a 6 foot step ladder and drop it off on its face and it hits just right and you get a cracked screen and now you have possible litigation or warranty claims. They're not suggesting that you drop it from that height, but we all know that sometimes people do that just to test it and see, oh, well, can I replicate that? Again, I think it was cool that they put it up there. And if you look at early videos on that, whether it's mine, whether it's Vlad Kostek's, anybody who did a review at the time, you're going to see that on our videos where it still shows them dropping it from that ladder. But great point. I think that they are growing as a company and they're learning as they go, and hopefully they'll adjust and they'll get to where they need to be. But great comments, great questions. Keep firing them in there. I do want to go ahead and move on to the next topic if I can, though. And let me double check my list here, make sure I stay on task because I want to make sure that I'm trying to stay true. But again, Carolini, hello. Carolini Davila. Hello to you. Sorry I can't pop your names up. For those of you joining late, that's not working at the moment, but I am able to see everything. So that's a good thing. But I do want to make sure that I get to my list here of different things that we're going to talk about. We already talked about, and if you missed it, you can go back and watch the replay. Uh, we already talked about the latest news on the A5X2, the fact that they got FCC approval here in the United States, and that dropped early this week, and what that means, whether it's going to be released currently or within this calendar year, or whether it's going to be pushed into next year. But one thing I want to talk about and get your feedback on and comments on, and again, if you have more questions on the A5X2, please drop those in, and I'll be showing some other things as well that I had some questions asked of me earlier in the week on with my A5X and my A6X2, just to give you some comparisons and side by sides for a couple of things. But I do want to talk about this new goal that I mentioned earlier this week to try to hit 2,000 subscribers by my 1 year anniversary. And for those of you who don't know and haven't been around the channel as long, I started this December 9th of last year's when I put out my first trailer video, I guess you would call it. Uh, and then shortly after that, did a Rocketbook video and a couple other things. And since then, have done a lot of other stuff, but it's very important to me to, since this is growing, to kind of see where it goes. Still a hobby, it's not a full-time thing, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying connecting with all of you, enjoying these conversations that we keep having, and hopefully we can keep that momentum up. And part of that, we're sitting right now at 1,440 subscribers. I'd love to see that hit, and it is a realistic goal based on the growth we've had to date, to hit 2,000 by December 9th. So if you have friends, if you have family, if you have coworkers, point them to the channel, have them subscribe, like, kind of push us more towards the algorithm. That would be great. We are getting some more comments in the chat. Apologize again for having to read, but I want to make sure that these get addressed. So Robert Clark says it's hard to have confidence in them. Uh, getting have confidence in them getting it out before Christmas, considering they've said they will not make the mistake of having adequate supply before they open it for orders. Robert, that's a great point. And I think that there's a couple of things to think about there. One, they're skipping the pre order phase. They mentioned that in that same post. And I believe you're talking, probably referring to the closer to the carrot comment. And I do think that there is a conversation to be had about whether they're going to be able to get this to market or not. But when they said they weren't going to take pre orders, they said they were going to take through the holiday, which just ended on Monday in China, and they were going to start bulking up and go into high production mode. So, really push the manufacturing aspect and try to get devices on hand. And they were going to go, instead of to pre orders, straight to order. So, the idea was to manufacture as many devices as they can, and since they've gone to the one model instead of the crystal versus the plastic, I think, or they're both plastic, but the crystal versus the kind of the non see-through back, I think they can probably produce these faster. And if they've got those components, I think they may be able to ramp up production and manufacturing in a quicker way. That's conjecture, but based on what they've said, that's where I see you may have that silver lining. Not saying for sure it's going to happen this year, but I do think it's possible. And then they can begin shipping almost immediately once they have enough of a supply on hand. They also mentioned already having a batch of devices produced, but they just didn't have enough to meet pent up demand. So, again, not 100% sure, um, but great point. And I think we should all be a slight bit skeptical just because you never know what's going to happen. You don't know what other kinds of delays they might run into, but it does appear that they are still vying to get this done as quickly as possible. David Paxton says after having the books 10 point or the books go 10.3, I now use the A5X2, probably the A6X2. David, let me know if that's what it was. And I don't mind the thickness due to the lightness of it. The even thinner A5X2 will be welcome. The Carter 1300 will be its greatest feature. Here, I think you kind of stumble onto some gold. I think you're referring to the A6X2. Oh, nope, correct that. David said the A5X. And of course, I have the A5X as well and absolutely love it. And one thing you're going to notice with this new device, where it's a little different than the Go 10.3, is going to be in that it's the Mobius screen. So it's still Carta 1300, but it's plastic. So, David, if you're used to the plastic Mobius screen on the A5X, I don't know if Mobius is the best. That's what everybody refers to it as, but it's definitely Carta 1300 plastic screen. That is a different feel than the glass screen. I love the A6X2. I think it's a great little device, but I do find that I still prefer the Feel Right 2 film on the A5X over the feel of the Feel Right 2 on the A6X2 screen, which is glass. And now, granted, it's a Carta 1200, but it's just that harder tactile feeling that gives me a little bit of pause. Great point, though. And I do think that'll be one of its best features. That and the dual side rails, and of course the modularity. But the dual side rails are huge. I love those on the A6X2. Being able to swipe to undo and redo, being able to have both my lasso and my eraser gesture and make those however I want to make them. It's genius. They've done a really good job with that. Carolini Davila, and I do hope I'm pronouncing your names correctly, says I kind of gave up from Supernode. I've decided to give digital planning in my tablet a try as I already carry so many notebooks, laptop books with me due to work. Um, I understand. I mean, this device has been delayed. I wouldn't say I would encourage you not to give up on e-ink if you really want to go to the digital planning route. Uh, but if you are okay drawing, or not drawing, if you're okay writing on a glass screen or getting something like a paper-like screen and it dilutes the clarity a little bit of a traditional tablet, whether that's a Samsung or an iPad or something like that, I think you would be served just fine if you don't have that issue. I hate to write on a glass screen without any kind of protector. Even the A6X2, if it was a straight glass screen without that Feel Right 2 film, I couldn't do it. It's number one, there's the palm rejection issue, especially on tablets that aren't made for e-ink. That Wacom EMR really helps with that. But on top of that, it's just the feel of it. It's slippery, it slides, my handwriting doesn't look the same. It doesn't, nothing's going to feel like paper, but it's going to feel more familiar if you have e-ink. I guess is the only way to say it. And to me, both of these feel like writing on a pad of paper, uh, more so with the give you get from the plastic screen with the Feel Right 2 film. So anyway, that's just my take, but Carolini, I 100% agree with you that there's there's a lot of frustration out there. And I would say, do your research too. Supernode isn't right for everybody. For me, it's the device that works. It's the one that best fits my needs. That doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. You've seen people already in the chat talking about the Go 5 or the Go 10.3, and it's a great device from everything I've heard. I don't want full on Android. I don't want that. I don't need that on E. It's overkill. I don't know if you all saw Morning Coach, JB Gossinger did a video on declining sales of the M4 Apple iPad. and the idea that some people see it as overkill. It does too much. It has a high-end PC level chip in an iPad, and a lot of people aren't going to be doing what I'm doing my with my Asus ZenBook on an iPad. And I think that's a really important thing to consider when you are thinking about the device to buy for you. If you need those Android apps, if you need, for example, Word, if you need all of that, it's very important that you consider that when you're buying one of these tablets and considering the experience that you're going to have. Because most of those devices, and Kit Betts Masters does a great job, and so does Jeffrey Moss, of showing how these different apps work with e-ink because they're not designed or optimized for it in most cases. So you're going to have some trouble if you're using OneNote, if you're using Word, if you're using different tools. Now, if you're typing in Word, you should be fine, but there are some issues. Carolini also says, I'm using a paper-like screen, and I actually hate it because it uses the tip more and often doesn't recognize my handwriting. It changes how it looks, what it looks like. Does that happen with Supernode? Absolutely not. So let me address that. Uh, with the Supernote specifically, it has a combination of things which makes it unique in the e-ink space. One is it has the Feel Right 2 film, which is a rougher film that goes over the screen, but then it has a ceramic nib if you buy one of their pens. Now, you can buy any EMR stylus and it will work. Any Wacom stylus out there will work on the Supernote. So if you like a Lamy, if you like the Norris Digital Jumbo, which I have, all of those work. However, if you use the ceramic nib, it never spins. So you're never going to have to replace that unless you happen to break it or the stylus gets broken or something happens to that degree. When you mix those two things together, you get very close distance to the writing surface. And when you pull up those e-ink particles, and as a matter of fact, let me pop over because I do want to show. So give me just a second here and I will pop over and I'll show this. All right, so here I have my A6X2 and I have my A5X. Let's see if I can focus that in a little bit better. Now, this is the same page on both, and this is a really good segue into the thing I was asked about. And those of you who've followed me for a while, you've probably seen me talk about this. I do a lot of my blog writing on this device, specifically on the A5X, and then use the handwriting conversion to push that out as a Word document that I pull into Word because it natively, can create a Word document, and then I format it. That whole process does not take a ton of time. If you do subscribe to me on Patreon, or I should say, if you do become a supporter on Patreon, I actually show the creation, this part, the raw export, the cleanup on that I do in Word, and the finished product in the blog. So I kind of show you that full range of things. Again, just a little bit about my work style. But what I've been asked about is what the experience is like to write on here on the A6X2 and then jump over to the A5X. Now, I synced and these came over, and you'll see that my writing actually adapted because I wrote this particular blog on the A6X2. And a lot of times I think, well, I have to write this big. I really don't. I wrote at this level, and it's not quite as attractive in some ways as I feel like I write at the larger size. This is still more comfortable to me. And I think once you get the Carter 1300, it's going to be even better. But that being said, The scaling is awesome. So I write smaller here. I have to write more precise here. The handwriting recognition is actually better on the A6X2 because, again, I'm kind of being forced to write a little bit um, clearer, but when it scales, it looks better. And I don't know how to explain that. So let me pull this up, see if we can get this to focus in a little bit. And you'll see that's kind of how my writing looks. It's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but there it is. And then what I'll do is I'll pull this one up, and you'll see when it scales, it just, I don't know, it just looks better to me. And maybe that's just my bias. And as we all know, we all have biases. There are always going to be things that we like better depending on how we engage with what we have. But I do think it's important to note that the scaling is really good. And even if I wrote it here, I would probably write it about the size you see it here. And then when it's scaled down, it would look more like this, but it would probably look a little bit better than this does to me. Again, I'm not sure if it's because I'm writing more precisely here because it's a smaller screen, or if it's because I'm writing more deliberately, or if maybe this has a better handwriting recognition on the A6X2. But I did want to show that. And you can see as I go through, oh, sorry, two fingers. You can see that it scales really, really well. And I just like it a lot. And then if you look at this pen nib, and I will show you both of these styluses since you're asking the question about why it's different. So this is the standard pen that comes with the super, or doesn't come with, but by the time you add this and add the cover, you're looking at a pretty close comparison to what you would pay for something with Remarkable or a Books device that comes with the pen already in. This one is a little bit more expensive, which is the Heart of Metal pen. This happens to be the Samurai pen or stylus. Let's see if I can get a better look there. And you can see that nib, and I don't know if it's going to do it justice on the camera angle there. That's probably a better look. The nice thing about these is, people are talking about how much the styluses are on these particular devices. And I think the new Remarkable stylus, and don't quote me on this, but I've seen several reviews on it. I think some people are talking about it's close to $100. This Samurai pen, this copper pen, is $75. So that's a pretty good price for me for something you're never going to have to replace the nib on. You're never going to have to um, you know, change out the internals. And then you can always make your own custom pin with that same tip, that same ceramic tip. Roderick at Rants About Tech has done that before, and he made it with a Lamy pin, and he's also done it with another pin. So check out his channel. A lot of really cool stuff. So anyway, hopefully that helps. Let me know if you need more information there. But I think that you're definitely going to notice that your handwriting looks more authentic. You're going to notice that it does a better job at showing how you actually write in the moment. It really does a good job. Robert says, by the way, your white border box is a bit too bold. Thank you. I will try to. I don't know that I can fix that now, but that is good. A good tip for future uh, live streams. This is my first time kind of experimenting with some of this, and I think there's it's going to be interesting for me as I keep learning. But yeah, Robert, thank you so much for that feedback, and hopefully we can get that taken care of in future streams. um, em for me says having Android is essential. 100% understand. If you need Android, the Supernote is not the device for you. It's just not going to be. You can sideload apps, which I think is a good thing now. The A6X2 has allowed that. So does the A5X, but it doesn't handle it very well. I think because it's older, it's the older generation. Kindle works very well on there. Kobo, not so much. The Nook app does work. Libby, I cannot get to work, but on the A6X2, all of those work very well. Actually, the Nook app from Barnes and Noble is probably the best besides the Kindle, and maybe even better than the Kindle. It's just a really good implementation of how that works. But again, it's not the right device for everybody. It's like if you want something that's truly stripped down, distraction free, you can pick up and treat just like a pad of paper. This may even be a little too complex versus something like Remarkable. Uh, Jaron says, can you get different thicknesses of the ceramic nibs? No, you cannot. The ceramic nib is meant to be very fine. You can adjust your pen thickness of the line, but you're going to have that same really thin, very fine point. Now, the benefit of that is that if you're trying to write with a fine point or if you're sketching, and one thing the Supernote has that others don't is a dedicated paint app called Atelier. I don't draw, I'm not artistic that way, although I am, the more I watch Brad Colbo, the more I really want to take his class and learn how to draw. But again, it may be something that in the future they would consider. Although I like that really fine, almost pen, ballpoint pen type feel that you get from the ceramic nib. But great question. Um, yeah, Jaron, as far as the side loading and why don't they just allow the Google Store? I think they don't want to go through the Okay, two things. I think one's a philosophy. I really don't want full Google Play on this device. As I've mentioned before, I don't need it. Quite frankly, this device already does everything I need it to do. Everything extra that it does is icing on the cake for me. So when they added the ability to sideload, that just made the reading experience that much better for me. I could already here in the States do um, send a Kindle from Libby. So I was able to uh, I was able to send my library books directly to my Kindle and read those there. But now that I have the Libby app sideloaded, I can read them natively in Libby as well. And so, especially for those who are overseas or who are outside the United States who can't use Send to Kindle, that was a great feature to have. If you live in the Kobo ecosystem, which I have a Kobo and I have Kindle books, I can now read both of those on my device. For those who like co-reader, not a huge fan myself just because the interface is clunky to me, but again, that's a personal preference. Now that works on here. Nook, Barnes and Noble. So those are the reasons I think that it's really interesting and really good. The choices they're making that you get to pick what you sideload and what you don't sideload, but without having to go through the full Google experience. Yes, it takes a little bit more time. I do hope they at least get it to where APK files self extract. It's a little bit of a process right now to go to APK Mirror or another site, download the APK, and then upload it. But it really isn't that bad once you get used to it. Once you install the tools, it works pretty seamlessly. But great question. And I think they struggle with that because they don't want to be a books. They don't want to have people trying to load something like Obsidian on here or OneNote and have a horrible experience because it doesn't work. The e-ink input just does not work. I've tried them. I've done videos on them. They don't look good. And you even see that on the books, which is better because of their super refresh technology and some of the things that they do with horsepower, uh, chipset wise, but it's still not as good as what you're going to get on a tablet or on a PC that has writing input. So again, great question. Great question. Uh, Ian for me says I owned an A6X2 Nomad, which I gave to my oldest grandchild for college, and now wants a Go 10.3. I used it for a while, tried to sideload MS Office, and worked poorly, crashed numerous times. Yeah, I think that's absolutely going to be an issue uh, if you're trying to use apps that aren't optimized for e-ink. David says, I just want direct access to OneDrive. The sync function does work really well on the A5X and the A6X2. If you sync those drives, you do get a two-way sync. So if you add something in one location, it comes over to the other. It is not going to be a seamless experience, like you would have, obviously with uh, a books device where you're opening a Word and the Word app. That's not going to happen. But if you opened a Word file, if you pulled it into the documents folder and you open a docx file, you will see it formatted correctly on the Supernote because it supports that file type natively in their reader, and you can actually do markup and edits and different things of that nature. I think eventually you'll be able to resize images and do some other things, but right now that's kind of a limitation of the device. Carolyn says, or Carolini, sorry, says, I don't know if you have seen this before, or done this before, sorry. Uh, it shared how you're planning personal work on the Supernote. Uh, Carolina, I have. So I've done a lot of videos on my personal workflow with this and how I use it, and I'll drop those down in the description afterwards. But I use this all the time. I've had the A5X now for coming up on 3.5 years, and I haven't picked up a pad of paper in that time frame unless I've left this thing at home or unless I've had um, left it in my office, something like that. I only carry pens and paper, and I even carry a Rocketbook as a backup spare so I can try to stay digital to make that happen, uh, to make my life as digital as possible. But again, um, yeah, for me, there are a lot of use cases. I use the embedded calendar in the system. I use the to-do list, which I didn't think I would use because I use Google and I link my calendar to Google, and it works really good. Um, And Jaron says your descriptions of how you actually use the device is one of the strengths of your channel. Thank you very much. Appreciate that because I really do. I mean, this is something I use, and it's not throwing any shade. It's not saying anything negative about the other devices. It's really not. Uh, they just don't fit the way I engage with the technology. And since I've added Obsidian into the mix and the plug-in from Supernote to that, it makes it really easy to take handwritten text that's automatically being recognized in the background, turn that into a digital format in Obsidian, and then make connections with links to all of the things that I'm managing and interacting with on a daily basis. So again, you know, uh, Carolini, I'll put plenty of things down in the description after the stream is done, but also just remember my channel. I've got officially this stream is my 201st video. So that's a pretty big milestone considering I started this as just a small trailer and talking about Rocketbooks and didn't think it was going to go really anywhere other than a creative experience and learning some new things. But no, great points there. Um, So we talked a little bit about trying to reach 2,000 subscribers. Really interested in your thoughts about that. Would like to know if you all think that's attainable, if it's feasible, uh, and appreciate all of the support that we've had to date on that. I am going to pull up because the next topic that I have down, and please keep the comments coming, keep the questions coming, but I do want to talk for a minute about. Let me get over here. So my blog has kind of been on hiatus, unfortunately, for a little while. But here recently, I went ahead and let me go ahead and pop over to screen sharing here. And I kind of came back to it. And I think the reason I came back to it is because this idea, when I'm talking about trying to get to 2,000 subscribers, this channel isn't just about the supernote. It's not just about, um, using one piece of technology. It's about an intentional way to use different types of technology to make yourself more productive and keep yourself more organized. And part of that came back to my blog. And so this morning I put out one on artificial intelligence, and I encourage you to go ahead and read that. I've changed my stance a little bit, not substantially, but a bit on how this is implemented because I've seen AI used in some really cool ways recently. And in this, I talk a lot about Conmigo. And for those of you, I did a video a while back on open educational resources and open source products. I mean, I'm broadcasting right now from OBS, which is an open source product with a bunch of open source plugins. And I really find that to be valuable. Developer communities are underrated. And my blog talks about now you have Conmigo entering into the AI space. So they're using the ChatGPT 4 model, but they have a lot of scaffolding up and it's very education centered. So I encourage you read the blog. I also have a blog on the Towards 2000 goal. So please read that, comment, subscribe to the blog. I promise I'm going to try to get more consistent. I'm going to try and get at least 2 posts out a month so that I can really, tap into another way of communicating out information and trying to do that. So that's another thing I just wanted to talk about. But let me know your comments on this. AI is a contentious topic right now. A lot of people don't know what to think about it. And Copilot did this. I asked it to tell me or to generate an image describing what it saw as AI. And it came up with this robot and all of these servers hooked up. Again, not artistic in my own right, but I asked it to give me what it thought that might look like. And I do encourage you to check out Conmigo. It is a great tool. For $44 a year, you can, and I get nothing out of this. There's no affiliation or no affiliate links. If you're an educator, it's free to you. So if you're a teacher, it's 100% free. If you are a family, you can spend $44 a year and get it for your entire family. Or an individual, you can spend $44 and get it for a whole year. You can also try it out for just $4 a month. So it's really a cool thing. It really helps in a safe way by not sending your data out, help you to go through and create everything from rubrics to lesson plans to uh, question prompts, quiz questions, all kinds of different things. It's really cool. Carolini says, get this here. I'd love to hear how you manage your work, personal life with YouTube creation. I tried and couldn't keep it up. It's a struggle, but it's also a lot of fun. Again, this is kind of the hobby that I've chosen to do. If I was expecting to make a living off of YouTube, that isn't going to happen with the way I do it. My personal goal is to put out about one main video or piece of content a week. So this will be my piece of content for this week. The piece of content last week was a stream with the E team, and I suggest you take a look at that. It's now been chaptered out. So to me, it really is a hobby. It's something I enjoy doing. It helps me as a teacher, actually. So the reason YouTube fits in with what I'm doing is that I teach online primarily, but also teach some hybrid courses, and I run a center for teaching and learning. So, a lot of what I do here, learning how to use different creation tools, learning about open educational resources and the OBS platform, all of these different things inform what I can do and bring to faculty at the university. and also into the classroom with my students. So a lot of it is, making sure that it complements what I'm already doing. And quite frankly, it even complements a little bit with my personal life. My kids are into Discord. They do a lot of different things online. They're gamers. They are into esports. And if you go to Patreon and become a supporter, I also have a Discord channel, and my son Gabriel and my son Corey have been helping me kind of think through what that should be like, and and Gabriel's been very involved in helping me set it up because, quite frankly, I had never been on Discord, so I didn't know much about it. And you'll see that he's helped me do that. So again, it's more ways to engage, more things to think about, more tools in your toolkit. I don't think you ever really quit learning, and I think that it's a lot of fun. So again, Carolini, I think if I didn't enjoy it, if it wasn't fun for me, if it wasn't kind of in that hobby space where if I make a little bit of extra income, that's great. But these videos take, hours of work and prep to do. So the return on investment, if it was truly a profit making thing, I'm never going to be um, an MKBHD, or that's not going to be, this isn't going to be my primary thing. But it is a great community, and I've met some wonderful people through it. So anyway, thank you for that, very much so. Chris, good to see you. Is there a planner that works well with the Nomad? The screen is so small that the planners I've seen don't work well because the dates are so small to write in. What would you suggest, please? Okay, so those of you who have been around my channel for a long time know that I've struggled with this question. I think that, and let me switch back over to the demo view here because I do want to show you something. And I'm working on a video directly related to this at some point. But let me go back, and I want to go back to the file system. So, matter of fact, let's go. And sorry, folks, give me just a second. Again, the wonders of a live stream. So I'm going to do this on both of these. So what you'll see here is I have been again going back and forth with My Deep Guide, or the My Daily Organizer, excuse me, from My Deep Guide and Voya. And this is a wonderful planner. It does a lot of things. It's fairly inexpensive. He's already built out next year's and the year after's. It's a great planner. Hyperlinked, does a whole bunch of stuff. It's a large planner, and if you want all of your stuff in one file, it does a great job. Uh, but again, and it does fit on both devices, but it's not, I don't prefer to work that way. I also have on here the Get It Done planner, which is by JB Gossinger over at Morning Coach. And JB provides this planner for free. He has a whole system. You can sign up for other things, but you can get the planner for free. Also, very well developed, works really well. The issue to me, and I'm going to do a dedicated video on these, and of course, these again sync all the way across both platforms, but you can see that they take a little bit longer to upload here. Let me see if I can get this one. Should have gone on just a second. I did that back on August 15th, so now I have to find the right date here. Back to home, August, and we'll go to the 15th. Okay, so now you're seeing the same thing on both screens. Now, in order to get this, there's two ways you can do it. You can use it as a PDF. If you use it as a PDF, you have pinch to zoom. You'll see that's not working on either of these devices. What I chose to do to get the full functionality of the Supernote note apps, which is the tagging, the handwriting conversion, um, keyword searching, all of these things, the titling. I chose to convert it to a note template, which is something the Supernote does and retains those hyperlinks you saw me just using to navigate. The problem is that you lose that ability to scroll. Now, what you do gain with the Nomad, and you can do this on the A5X as well, is you can turn it. And when you turn it, you get that landscape view. And that gives you a little bit more screen real estate, but not a lot. And you have to write really small, or you have to write, select it, and then shrink it to fit it on the line. And that to me just is not um, productive. And the same is true now. If you work in the PDF planner, it's much easier to do again because you can zoom. So if you don't need those headers, if you don't need the handwriting recognition, if all you need, and you can do keywords, let me go back. You can do keywords on a PDF. You can also do embedded comments and the annotations. So those things you can do on a PDF. So navigation wise, it is easier to do on a PDF. And you can, even on the A5X, sorry, I didn't get down just right, turn that into landscape mode here, which gives you even more real estate to write. And then you can always, again, turn it back. And so we'll go back to the other way here. Now, the reason that I mentioned that is because, let me go back and I'll show you. Just a second, I hit that toolbar. I'll also open up my deep guide. And I have been testing these for the last couple of weeks just to see if I could go to a planner. And I really just, I couldn't. And I think this one may be, go back here. See if this is on the same one. I think I did it on the 15th as well. Yep, I must have done this one on a different date, so I do apologize. But what you'll see here is this has a little bit more room as far as writing, but on here, it's just so small. Again, you can turn it to landscape, you can um, do a lot of other things with it, but it's just not the way I work. So I just want to be clear about that. What I find the most effective, and again, most of you who know me know this, is to use the calendar app in the Supernote. And the reason that I like the calendar app so much is because it works and integrates with everything else that I'm trying to do. It's a little bit more legible. You can write on everything but the daily view, which I really hope they fix. You can see any notes that you've created for that day. You can create a new note directly from the calendar. You can see any upcoming meetings that you have. And it just gives you so many tools to be able to use. And when you combine that with the new to do list, which is, sorry, I'm having to lean over folks out of frame just because I'm too far away from what I'm looking at. But if you combine that with the to do list, and what you'll notice here is if I go to social, you'll see a bunch of completed items here. And matter of fact, when I click on, sorry, when I press on the notebook here, this takes me to that planner. So I even tested the to do functionality within the planners to see what that would look like when I went to it. And both of those went to JB's, but and if you go back, you go back to the to do list. Let me see if there's one that I had in my deep guide. I may have erased those. Let's look here. Nope, here's my deep guide. So there you go. I have to remember which one I did here. I think it was this one. So there's a good example. This has a little bit more real estate. It's a little bit more legible, especially if you flip it. So, or actually, I don't have to do that. I was on the A5X. So if I flip this, you're going to see that's legible, but it's not great. And it's not great because of just the size. So I think the planners are very hard. If you're using them as a PDF, absolutely you can do that. You can zoom in, zoom out. It's a little bit tedious, but it works if that's how you want to work. Personally, I like to use a combination of the calendar, notes, and the to do functionality to be able to make that work in a better way. And I have a whole video dedicated to that, so I won't, uh, go into that here, but I would encourage you to check that out. Chris, hopefully that answers your question. But that would be my take, and that would be what I would recommend is maybe using some of the built-in templates for daily tasks, different things, turning those into to-dos, and then using notebooks as kind of those more granular ways to do that. Um, but again, that's me. That's um, yeah, David says MDO works for him on the A6X2. And I'm curious if you're using it as a PDF instead of as a note. And I think that just goes back to my own workflow. I'm not saying that these don't work. I think both of these planners would work on the A6X2 if you're using the PDF and that's the way you like to work and the way that your workflow works. And David, yeah, you did say a PDF. Again, completely up to you. But if you wanted my opinion, I think the onboard tools, especially if they ever integrate the Note app or, excuse me, the To Do app, three things I think would make it replace, to me, any other planner out there. One, you integrate the To Do app so that you can see your to dos or at least access them in one of the blocks on the calendar app. Two, you allow handwriting on the daily view. That way you can pencil something in and go back and add it to your Google Calendar. Or if this is truly a replacement for a paper calendar, you don't have to add it anywhere. You just notate it and it's there. And number three, I really would love to see them add not only creation date, which I think I get why they do that as far as notes you see on that day, but creation date and last access date. To me, that would be a game changer. If I could see the note both on the date I created it and the last time I accessed it, then I could have all of my notes for that day for the meetings I have, be able to see my meetings next to it, access all of my information, and have that ready to go, and then still create new notes on the fly. So that's my take. Again, it's not perfect. It's just how I feel about it. You all, may have a totally different way of approaching this. And, drop that down in the comments or go to one of my videos, watch it, check out my workflow. Tell me what yours is. Share that with the community. We have had so many great conversations over the last 10 months about different things and how everybody approaches this differently. Carolini says, can you create your own planner with the templates on Supernote? Absolutely, you could. And I think that's what's kind of nice about this platform. If you go back, we'll go back to the files, we'll go to notes. And if you haven't seen this, and again, I do more in-depth walkthroughs. I encourage you to look at those. But when you go to create a new note, you're going to get a bunch of possible templates. And you can see all of those templates here. And with the linking function, and again, that's why I kind of see this, my workflow is much more organic. So when I'm creating a to do, I can circle that, turn that into a to do item from a note. And you can also circle that same item and turn it into a heading, a keyword, and a link. And so you can do all of these different things with it. Or I take that back. I don't think you can add a link. and a to do at the same time. I think that may be the limitation. I've got a video on it that you can check out, but you can like do a bunch of different things with the same piece of text by selecting it multiple times. So it's pretty cool. Doris signed on. Hello, Doris. Good to see you. Tried a PDF organizer from Etsy. It's too small for me on the Nomad. The to do list works well from the native app. So, again, that's another one for the to do list. I didn't think I was going to use it, but I find when I'm in meetings and I'm taking notes and someone says something, I can circle that really quick, add it as a to do. It remembers that I did it from that notebook and I can go back to it. So pretty cool. All right. Well, we are approaching, we're a little bit over time. I do want to drop one last thing real quick before I sign off. We've talked about the blog, we've talked about uh, that coming back, we've talked about kind of trying to hit that 2000 goal, which I'm really excited to try to do over these next 2 months and would appreciate all of you all's support for that. But, you know, the last thing I do want to mention is Patreon. And within that, kind of Discord, but mostly Patreon. So I'm going to switch back over to the screen share for a minute. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I did a video on this as well, but I'd appreciate any feedback, any comments you have. Uh, and I'm viewing this now as a paid member, but there are a lot of different things that I'm doing with Patreon and with Discord that I think are just hopefully going to add some value. One thing I do want to show you is the library. So if you come in, you'll see there are different things. Um, Here, the blogging with Supernote. I mentioned this earlier in the stream, kind of my process of how I create. Um, I write by hand and put that information into the Supernote, and then I kind of jump out of that and export it as a Word document after it's recognized as text. And then I edit that in Word, and then I eventually move it to the blog. It doesn't take as long as it sounds, but I kind of show you the raw inputs here and how that works. And you can see this is kind of the most recent one of the recent blogs that I did. I show you what the render looks like and all of the different components and how I kind of brainstorm and think through that. Then I show you what the initial word output looks like. And it's not perfect. There are things that can be improved, but you could also actually open this on the device and do some of it that way. That's not for me. I'd rather do this in full on Word because I can format it much faster and quicker. But again, some people really want to keep it contained in that ecosystem. And then I jump and show the final copy that is then going to go into Blogger. And that's where you'll see right here, this is what it ended up looking like in Word. And then if you view my blog, you'll see this was the final output. So it's just a way for me to brainstorm, get the ideas in, change it up, be able to focus on what I'm writing, and then go back in and add the details, whether it's hyperlinks or images or different things later and with the proper tool. The Supernote is not where I'm going to add this AI generated chasing 2000 subscribers image. No, I'm going to go to Copilot or something like that. I'm going to enter that in, and then I am going to um, use that as uh, as a jumping point. And I'll add that in the tool that works best for that piece of the puzzle. The pure writing piece, Supernote, hands down, one of my favorite things because I can just sit there and I can write. I do prefer it on the A5X, but again, that is a personal choice. So, all right, everybody. Well, it is 12:15 here in the U.S. Central Time. I appreciate all of you logging on, being with me. Any last questions before I sign off? But I think it's probably about that time. But I do want to thank all of you all. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if this has been valuable. Uh, Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody you know. I'm here. I'm on Patreon, and I just really, really appreciate your time. And I will see you all again soon. Have a great night.